So today, I'm joined by Stacey Levy, who is the founder of Ellie's Army Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that specializes in helping children suffering from life-threatening terminal illnesses. Whether that be financially, emotionally, or in any other capacity, Ellie's Army Foundation is there to help. I am very excited to bring you this conversation today, so let's do it.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender, but darling, you were meant to survive. With every start, we are born.
Thanks so much for taking the time, Stacey. I really appreciate you getting back to me. And
No, thank you for asking.
it's been great. I've really been trying to reach out to a lot of different nonprofit organizations to try to speak with their leadership. But as I'm sure you know, they're all very busy.
I know.
Especially now with COVID and a lot of changes and everything. So
Right.
I wanted to, speak with you, get really a great background from you, kind of where you started, where you are now. I mean, you're 20 years old now, right? The foundation?
Yes. But we took a hiatus for a while. So we really started again in 2017.
Okay.
So we kind of, are starting over.
Okay. Kind of like
Yeah.
rebranding almost.
Yeah, well, what happened was we started the foundation in 2001. It was called the Reach for the Stars Foundation. And we were helping families that had cystic fibrosis. What happened was Ellie was born with CF. And when she was around 9 years old, we started spending a lot more time in the hospital, and we started to see families who were struggling financially. Mm-hmm. So we decided to start the foundation. And then fast forward to 2014, Ellie passed away. And a couple of years after that, we decided to restart up the foundation. Okay. And we changed the name to Ellie's Army to honor her memory. And we changed our mission statement to include children and young adults with all life-threatening illnesses, not just cystic fibrosis.
And Ellie, for people who don't know who are listening, Ellie's your daughter, correct? Who was born
Yes.
in like the early 90s?
Yep, 91. Yeah.
Okay. And cystic fibrosis, that's something like genetic. So she was born with that?
Yes. She was. Both parents have to carry this gene. And then there's a 1 in 4 chance in every pregnancy that the baby will have CF. So wow. Ellie was born with CF, but she did really well for a while, mm-hmm. and then she was very healthy. It affects the lungs primarily and the digestive system. So she led a normal in the sense that she was able to do everything, Yeah. She was very bright, but it just was that her lungs were compromised. What it really is it's like a salt imbalance. And so the mucus in the body is very thick, and wherever you have mucus, it could be a problem. So like in the lungs, what would happen is that it causes a lot of infections and blockages, and ultimately it deteriorates the lungs. And Ellie had 2 double lung transplants at the end of her life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Yeah, I mean, they're coming up with a lot of medications now that are helping people that have it to survive longer. But unfortunately, it was a little late for Ellie.
Yeah. Yeah. Is cystic fibrosis something that you'd be able to eventually cure? Is it curable yet? Or is
No. No, it's a progressive disease.
Okay.
So the longer that, and like I said, it's primarily the lungs that give problems. Although, you know, we have mucus in all of our organs, so it affects everything.
Okay.
But the lungs, over time, the mucus clogs the lungs, and you have infections, and it deteriorates the lungs over time.
Okay. Okay. And you said it was able to live pretty much as normal of a life as like anybody else?
Yeah, the difference is that in order to stay well, it requires a lot of treatments. So, like a typical day for Ellie would be to wake up and do like a nebulizer with something that people with asthma breathe in. And then we would do, and then there was another nebulizer that she would do that helps to thin the mucus. And then we would give her physical therapy, which was like cupping on different lobes of the lungs. And that would help to break up the mucus, and then hopefully she could cough it up. And then she would do another breathing treatment with an antibiotic in it. That was like when she was well. And then, when she would eat, she would have to take these enzymes and different antibiotics. And so, I mean, she could take, when she was growing up, she could take maybe like 15 pills with a meal. And then, but then when people with CF get sick, the treatments get more intense. So what I just told you that she did in the morning, she did that 3 or 4 times a day. So you can imagine how much time doing these treatments would take in, somebody's life.
Oh, yeah.
Just on a daily basis.
Yeah, if you're doing that every day, especially, I can imagine too, if it affects the lungs, did it ever affect her, like, did she ever have to slow down if she was like running around when she was younger?
Oh, yeah.
She got tired quicker?
Yeah. When she was younger, we were fortunate. We lived in New York, and we used to come down to Florida for the winters because it was just a healthier environment for her. And so she would do a lot of swimming, and she was very active, and she did, very well. So you wouldn't even, most of her life, you would look at Ellie and never know that she had anything wrong with her. But it was, like I said, a deterioration over time. And when she went to college, I guess she probably wasn't doing her treatments as much as she should have been. And it really, the deterioration sped up at that moment. And she required transplant.
And is that something that's normal with cystic fibrosis? You're kind of expected, okay, eventually I'm going to have this transplant or this surgery done. Is that kind of like, that's going to happen?
I think so. Yeah. I think that at this point is the best option when you're in end stage lung disease.
Yeah.
That's what's going to save your life.
Yeah.
So Ellie had a transplant. She was at Duke University Medical Center, and after about 5 days, her lungs the new lungs went bad. They don't really even know what happened. So she was put on the transplant list again, and she was put on life support, where she stayed for about a month.
Oh, wow.
And it was, it was a very trying time, and it was hit or miss in terms of, there were many times that we almost lost her during that time, but she was really a fighter, and she managed to have the second transplant. She got the transplant, and she was doing well. She got out of the hospital eventually, and she had to go through like a rehab program to strengthen her lungs and her body, and to be in order to be discharged.
Yeah.
And she was discharged. She was driving home from North Carolina back to Florida with a friend, and when she got to Georgia, she caught a virus. And what happened was, when you get a transplant, you're on immunosuppressant medications. And so she couldn't fight the virus. So she got very sick. They had to ambulance her back to Duke. And she was in the hospital for a few months, and she ended up never coming out of the hospital.
Oh.
It just ravaged her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm, definitely very, very sorry to
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you kind of had, plans in the months after too, still with treatments with her, and then something like that happens, and it kind of, you kind of expect that she'd get sick in the future and so, but then when it actually happens, to that severity, it's gotta be, quite like hard-hitting. I can only imagine people with cystic fibrosis right now with coronavirus. I mean, they
very frightening.
They'd have to be in the same category as someone in their 70s or 80s right now, I'd assume.
Yeah, very, very frightening. But people are able to get the vaccine, which is good. And it's funny because when COVID came around, everybody became very aware of germs and, masks and washing your hands and, being paranoid to a certain extent. And that's the way that we lived with Ellie her whole life. We were always in fear of her getting sick, because if she got sick, it would turn into something much worse than, if you or I got sick.
Yeah.
So we were always afraid of that. So, we saw somebody coughing, or we would screen people that were coming into our house.
Yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah. So she, it was the kind of life people are living now.
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
we
say.
lived. Yeah, that's how people are living now, is how we really spent her lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm sure it's almost like you see people now running around with the wipes, making sure their house is clean, kind of screening and questioning people every single time they come in.
Yeah.
And, you're probably like that, that's how I've felt for the last, for 22 straight years.
Yes. Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild that you kind of were your whole life was the COVID years almost. To a certain extent. I can only imagine now.
Now it must be awful.
Yeah, I mean, if Ellie was still with us and we had COVID going around, I could only imagine.
It would be very scary. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm definitely on a positive note, excited to hear about the foundation, and I'm sure that Ellie's story had a lot, if not everything, to do with why you got started and why you're still going with it now.
Absolutely. And Ellie was such a fighter. I mean, her and her final days at Duke were kind of a culmination of her spirit. When she was put on that on life support. One of the things that they put her on was a machine called ECMO. And what ECMO is it puts the lungs at rest, so they're not working. And they have a cannula in your neck, and the blood comes out of the cannula and goes through this circuit, which oxygenates the blood. And then there's another cannula that goes back into your neck, which returns the oxygenated blood into your system. So this machine is actually doing the job of your lungs.
The breathing for you.
Yes, it's putting the oxygen into your lungs, which is what into your blood, which is what your lungs do.
Yeah.
And they felt that it was very important for her to stay in the best physical condition that she could, so that she would be able to be strong enough to fight for that next transplant. And she was up walking with that machine. And this was like, it was like Frankenstein kind of stuff. It would take 8 people to walk with her because they had to hold the cannula.
Oh, yeah, because that's not like an oxygen tank, right? That's
no, that's like, like this is attached to like your blood, and so she was walking with that, and at the time she walked the furthest that anybody had walked not only in Duke, but they keep up with other hospitals after a transplant. So, she was really a fighter, and she had a very strong spirit. She made the best out of being in the hospital. She had very close relationships with the people that worked in the hospital, because Ellie never felt sorry for herself. She accepted that this was her life. And if she was in the hospital, rather than her being like, I can't wait to get out of here, and I can't believe I'm in the hospital, she just made that her life.
Yeah.
So, it became, her relationships with the nurses and the doctors, they were very special, because she just accepted that this was it, and she was fighting. Obviously, she wanted to get out, but she didn't have any of those, why me moments, really. And so her fight and her spirit really helps us with the foundation, because we keep that with us to fight for these other families who are struggling so much, and these other children and young adults who are fighting for their lives. That philosophy that Ellie lived with has become the culture for the people that are working with us. And she was fun, so we try to make everything fun.
Yeah.
She's still very much a part of the organization.
No, yeah, definitely, and I think I think she'd always be kind of like that backbone to it, because it's kind of like always giving someone hope in terms of looking up to somebody, or kind of somewhere to look, for positivity. And I read an article, I think you had an interview with, to where you had said, you kind of sometimes look back and ask yourself, well, what would Ellie's perspective be right now? Or, what would her outlook be? And then you kind of use that as an approach. And I thought that was such a good perspective that most people just don't have, or don't refer back to anything in moments of, struggle or doubt or insecurity, where, I think that helps to put our feet back on the ground. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And she I'm not just saying this because she was my daughter. I mean, maybe a little bit more because she was my daughter. But she had a wisdom about her. Yeah. And and the way that she viewed life was, she just packed it in. She loved life. She wanted to experience as much as she could. She wanted to live to the fullest.
Yeah.
And so she wanted to be happy. She because enjoying time is so important. We're here for such a short time, and she knew that her life wouldn't be long. So she tried to, make it as wonderful a life as it could have been, and did so much, really. And, so that helps us with the foundation. It also helps me as her mother in my own grief. I can't, she would be very disappointed if I sat around feeling sorry for myself, like I have to live like she lived and enjoy life and, make the best of it and do as much as I can to make an impact. She was very much about impact and helping others. And, so I try, like you were saying, I try to live like Ellie did.
Yeah. And I can only imagine how tough sometimes it can be, with, birthdays coming around, anniversaries of certain important dates of her life and things like that too. That's something just where you can go back to and kind of remind yourself about her personality.
Yeah.
Kind of like her funness, if that's a word, because from the videos I watched about her and from doing a little bit of research, she kind of just outgoing.
Yes.
Which is something that especially in times like this, where COVID is starting to make a second at bat. I did read a story that I'd love for you to kind of expand on and tell more about in detail regarding the organization, what you guys do. The Lindsay Taylor story. I'd love for you to kind of go into a little bit of detail with that, because I read an article about that, about how she had cystic fibrosis. Then their house had like a pipe burst or so.
Yes. So what happened with Lindsay is her parents were already, using up most of their resources just to keep her healthy. And then a pipe burst in her house, and she and they started to get mold, and obviously that's very threatening to somebody who has a lung disease.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, that's like the worst. It's like kind of having coronavirus in your house almost.
Right. So we've had several people come to us with that issue where there's been mold in the house. We actually are helping a family now. This was an interesting family. There was mold in the house, and the landlord refused to take care of it. And then rather than correct the problem, they sold the building. So now these people were being evicted. And they didn't have money to start over with a security deposit and, first and last month's rent. They really didn't, they didn't know where to turn.
Yeah.
So what they did was they bought a shack and they turned it into one of those tiny houses. And so when they came to the foundation, they needed help to actually turn, use like sheetrock and and they needed to bring electric to the house, so they needed all of that wiring, and in the meantime, they needed to stay in a hotel. So we put them up in a hotel for a few weeks, and they're actually working on it now, trying to get that house prepared so that they would be able to live in it. And it was a smart idea for them because they're putting it on a family member's property,
Okay.
and they don't have to pay rent or anything like that. So it's really going to keep their expenses down, because they're, always coming up against medical bills and, so that's how the foundation helped this family. So we're always, it's, always on an individual basis.
Yeah.
We just try to help these families so that they can move forward and be in a safe place with their children.
Yeah.
But also to relieve that stress, because when you're dealing with a sick child, it's so much stress already. And, there's so much emotional energy being used for that. And then to have to worry whether you're going to have a roof over your head, that's just too much.
Yeah.
So,
especially a healthy roof too, because, if you have a roof, but yet you have mold,
right.
and then somebody has a lung disease, I mean, that's like,
yeah.
you're living in poison, basically.
Yeah.
It'd be like us living underwater.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it happens a lot. I mean, we've gotten a lot of people that have come with that issue.
And do they, do you guys seek out people, or do people come to you guys for help, or is it kind of like a mix?
Well, it's a mix. Because we've been growing in terms of what we're able to do to help people. We have a really successful walkathon event, and we've increased our donations. And like I said, we're growing.
Okay.
So we're able to help more people. So lately, I've been spending a lot of time reaching out to different hospitals across the country, because we don't just help people in Florida, we help people nationally. And,
wow, okay.
Yeah. So, we're reaching out to the different social work departments to let them know about us, and hopefully they'll use us as a resource. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has a division that helps connect people to resources. So we get a lot of referrals from them. We're known in the CF community just because we've been in it for so long.
Yeah.
But we don't, like I said, we don't only help people with cystic fibrosis. So we're trying to get the word out to other populations, and we're doing that by reaching out to the different hospitals.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll be getting more, applications and
Yeah.
And we really try to work with each individual. Like I said, we're trying to make a difference in their lives. So we don't just look to put a Band-Aid on the situation. For example, somebody might need to, pay a month's rent. And then, and that's what they need in the emergency. But when we get an application, first of all, we comb through those applications and really make sure that these people need the assistance that they're requesting, because obviously we have to do our due diligence, and anybody could ask for money. People donate their money to our organization. We have to be good stewards of that and make sure that we're really helping people that need to be helped. But while we're going through their applications and seeing the different financial issues, we're able to see where they might need help in other areas than what they're actually asking for. So somebody might need rent, and that would make their situation okay, but we want to make an impact in their lives so that they could really get back on their feet. So we might do 3 months rent.
Okay. Yeah, because you want it to be sustainable, right?
Exactly. We want them to get back on their feet so they could move forward. And I think that it was Lindsay actually that they had a tremendous amount of credit card debt, and we saw that. And while they were asking for help with the mold, we realized that they were just paying the interest off on their credit card bills. They weren't
doing anything to the principal. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And that's the business model, of the credit card companies.
Right, exactly. So we paid off their credit card bill so that they were able to get on top of their financial situation and move forward. And they weren't expecting that. They were expecting us to give them the month's rent. But we actually did a survey with the families that we assisted, and 100% of the families and 100% of the hospital workers that referred them said that Ellie's Army made a life-changing impact. So that's something that we feel really good about.
I do like that approach from you guys too, to where when somebody reaches out and they say, hey, I really, really just need you to do this, you guys kind of taking a step back, reflecting and kind of analyzing the whole situation to being like, well, if they want this, A, can we do this? And B, is there something better that we can do that would actually really, really actually help them rather than just a crutch? Because I think that's important, because I think that a lot of times in times of need, everyone just looks at what's right in front of them. Not realizing that, there's 20 other walls right after that one.
Right.
If you guys, getting past that first wall, being like, all right, well, how do we kind of get ahead here so this doesn't keep happening?
Right, exactly.
I think that's great. And it probably is eye-opening to them too, to where, they ask for something and then you return it with something a little bit more well put, well organized, and thought out than just maybe, what's right in front of them. I think that's a great approach to analyze really the entire situation, because when you're in that situation, I can only imagine, you're not really thinking down the road, you're just thinking
you just got to get out of the situation that you're in right then.
I wanted to ask you on the applications too that you guys accept and so forth. Have you guys came across people who submit applications that aren't necessarily what you guys are looking to help with, to where maybe their motive is not really cystic fibrosis related? You think it might be more of like a scam, a fraud or so? Because we that with coronavirus, that's really became a big issue when COVID funding relief has been sent out. I work in real estate, and the amount of applications we received of people pretending to be other people for money, it became rampant. And in Miami especially, I think a lot of the major cities, everything became virtual. You didn't have to meet people in person, which kind of created a quicker process. And that became a concern in my field. I saw it on the government's end enormously when they're shelling out tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars to restaurants, to places, to businesses that may not even exist. And then I didn't even think about the effect that it would have on nonprofits, to where, people, all you have to do is submit an application and then maybe have a phone call, and then you might have access to money that people donated to a good cause. And once in a while you see these, stories come across the news, but when you had brought up the application process before, I wanted to ask you about that, on if you guys have had any, especially during COVID, if how you deal with those too. Because
we haven't. Yeah, we haven't really had people that have. We haven't gotten applications that were completely fraudulent.
No? Okay.
No, we've never gotten that. But one of the things that come across sometimes that we, and it's hard because, you know, you feel bad that a person is in the position that they're in, but, you know, we try to help people that have run out of their own resources. And we've received applications where, you know, we comb through their bank statements and their credit card statements, and you know, so it's like it's almost like a little forensic
an audit almost.
Yes. And when you start to see like Victoria's Secret, you know, like all of this,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we can't, that's not the person that we're going to be helping. I mean, they might have ended up in a bad position.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can't pay for people to, you know, do that and then help them out.
Yeah, you want to be confident knowing that, you know, you're helping out people that are doing everything they can to help themselves, and they just maybe don't have the resource to. That makes sense.
Well, like I said, you know, our donors are trusting us with their money, and we have to make sure that we you know, are handling it respectfully and carefully, and that we're really meeting our mission statement, which is to help people that, you know, are struggling because of their illness and life situations, that they, you know, that it's just gotten to be too much.
Yeah.
When we tell somebody what we're going to be able to do to help them, you know, very often there's a silence on the phone, and the person, you know, needs to like compose themselves because there's such relief in what we've told them that they, you know, they could breathe, and this, you know, the stress is alleviated. And I get to hear that. You know, Romina gets to hear that. I wish that all of our donors could hear that, because it makes it very worthwhile. And, you know, to truly, it's a very humbling experience. And, you know, you see firsthand how you're truly making a difference in another person's life and helping them to get back on track. You know, it's very meaningful.
Yeah, it's got to be, got to go a long way. And you got to, at the end of the day, feel very good about yourself, you know, especially volunteering too, to where you probably have a full-time job and, you know, family, friendship commitments too. What do some of your volunteers do? Do they help with the applications? Do they help to try to reach out and outreach? Do they, what are some of their roles?
So, a lot of the volunteers that we've had so far are people, a lot of them are helping us with fundraising.
Okay.
So even like people having a barbecue at their house, and, you know, inviting their friends and asking them to make a $25 donation so that money would go to the charity. We have a big event that is called the Dirty Socks 5K Run and Walkathon in Aventura every year. And we always need volunteers for that day. It's a great event. We just had our third one, and it's growing substantially. We did much more than we had, you know, originally anticipated. And, I think that people that volunteer for that feel very good about being a part of such a great day. I could tell you the reason why it's called Dirty Socks is because
I was going to ask you.
When Ellie had her transplant, like I said, it was very important for her to be as strong as she could. So the doctors would always tell her that they wanted her to walk. and she would have to do laps around the hospital. And she had one surgeon in particular who had a very close relationship with. And he used to tell her he wanted to see dirty socks because that would prove that she had been walking.
Okay.
Yeah. And so one day she gave him her dirty socks in a bag. And he said that he would keep them in his office for the rest of his life. And he recently sent us a picture of those socks hanging in his office.
That's cute.
Yeah,
That's very powerful, I have to say. That's definitely something remembering, you know. That goes a long way.
Yeah. So, you know, all kids wear medical socks. And so when they're in the hospital, so, you know, we take that day and we're basically walking for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's a 5K, you said?
It's a 5K and a walkathon.
Okay.
So we have runners and we have walkers, and we have a village that has different companies take tents, and we have a DJ and some food trucks. It's a fun day. It's a fun day, and people are very inspired by it, and it's been growing. So
Good.
so that's a great volunteer opportunity too.
Yeah, that does. And when is it every year?
Well, we originally, the first 2 years, it was on Martin Luther King's birthday. Last year, we had to push it to April because of COVID. We did it at the end of April when things were first starting to open up. And this year, we haven't chosen a date yet, but we believe that it's going to be it'll be in February or March. So we're just about ready to pick out the date. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys are always trying to think of or do similar events as well, especially because it's gotta help with fundraising a lot, you know, those types of things, right? And just kind of like give an overall awareness to everyone.
Yes, a lot of people have gotten involved because they went to the walk, and once they understand our mission and learn about us, most people want to get involved. You know, it's something that's important because it's, you know, like I said, it's hard enough to have a sick child or to be a young adult that is sick. Yeah. And, you know, having to pay your own bills and not being able to work when you're sick. You know, we have people that come to us that lost their jobs because they've had to spend so much time in the hospital. And then the next thing you know, they can't pay their rent. Or they can't afford medication or therapy. Even little things like nutritional supplements, you know, like Ensure or Boost. Those drinks are so expensive. Yeah. I think for a 6-pack, it's like $10. Yeah. And you can, you know, need to drink a couple a day. Mm-hmm. So that could really add up. But it could make a major difference in your health when you have to gain weight and you need to get, you know, nutrition. You know, those things really make a difference, but that's something that falls away so quickly because it seems like it's an extra. Yeah. You know, and so we've purchased a lot of nutritional supplements for people.
That's good. Do you have any outlets for people that are experiencing like the same issue? Like, is there your go-to is like Costco or Sam's Club or one of the you know, to buy these important items in bulk? Would you have any recommendation to someone who's running into the same problem, saying, "Hey, I need these, you know, 5 or 10 a day, and it's getting expensive"?
Yeah.
Is there any place you would maybe point them, or?
I haven't found any place in, you know, that people could buy it in bulk.
Okay.
and these things tend to be expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a story when I was one of my high school teachers was explaining to us part of the teachers kind of like PTO and their sick days and how they worked, and there was a big change in the sick day system to where this one teacher he wasn't terminally ill, but he was consistently sick, battling a disease. I forget what it was, and he kept on coming in because he was ran out of sick days. So all the teachers would see him trickling into school just trying to teach, and I mean he was just looking awful. And they ended up making a change to the sick days to where you could have a portion of everyone's sick days, almost kind of like how taxes work.
Right.
All the teachers could go into the sick day bank.
Yes.
And
that's wonderful.
Yeah. I thought that was a great idea.
That's terrific.
You never know when either tragedy or illness can strike, and then your sick days run out pretty quick, and then it's either you take a leave and you don't have income anymore while you're sick. So it reminded me though before when you were
yes, I've heard of police doing that.
Yeah,
I've heard a couple of stories with that. I think that's great, but unfortunately most people don't have access to that kind of relief.
Yeah, especially if they're in private business, working hourly, things like that.
Yeah.
They don't have those kind of like group benefits.
That kind of support. And a lot of times what happens is that a family, a parent needs to be in the hospital with their child. So like you said, they either wouldn't get paid for the time that they missed, or sometimes they lose their jobs completely.
Yeah.
But you need to be in the hospital with your child when they're sick. That was how this whole thing started, was that when Ellie was a child, we were spending a lot of time in the hospital, and there was another little boy there who also was spending a lot of time in the hospital, and he was always alone. Mm-hmm. And Ellie, had asked me why he was always alone, because, we were fortunate enough that, I never left the hospital, or my husband was there if I did. She never had to be alone. Yeah. And we came to find out that his mother was a single mother. She had other children. She needed to work 2 jobs to be able to support them. So when the child was in the hospital, she knew he was safe, but she couldn't really visit him. She had to take care of her other children, and she had to work.
Yeah, that's awful.
So this poor kid was spending all this time alone, and that was really the situation that sparked the idea for the foundation. It upset Ellie tremendously to see that.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of talking about it and decided, this is something that we need to try to do something about.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. Even giving Ellie like a different perspective on life. Even like the scenario she was in too. She could always look to someone in that position and be like, oh wow, that little boy. Like, even though me and him may be in similar positions, I have maybe a consistently supportive group behind me with my family, my parents always coming around, and then looking at his situation, giving her even a different perspective on
absolutely
on things too. That's
that was Ellie. Ellie, chose to count her blessings rather than look to see what was, what wasn't working.
Yeah.
And we all have blessings. And, that's what we need to focus on, because, you know, I taught Ellie from a very young age that in a lot of ways we were very lucky that this happened to us, because we learned very early on that life is precious and that it's short and that you need to live it to its fullest and love people to your fullest. And so we got to do a lot of that at a very young age and pack in as much as we could, where a lot of people unfortunately don't realize that until, you know, way down the road, and they didn't have the opportunity to you know, live so fully and you know, have those relationships. And and I think that she really believed that. And she always knew she had it. She always, you know, we never hid anything from her. But she's, you know, she got to do a lot of things because of it. You know, we every year we had these big galas, and we had a lot of celebrities and sports people there. And,
Oh, wow.
you know, she got to enjoy all of that. Every year at the galas, she sang. She had a beautiful singing voice. As a matter of fact, if you go on the website, there's a video. I don't know if you saw it.
I did watch that video, yeah.
Yes, that's Ellie singing.
Yeah, because she's like giggling in a lot.
Yeah,
of
she's
yeah.
laughing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, she felt like she got a lot, there were a lot of benefits to it for her.
Yeah.
If you could, you know, if you could say that.
Yeah, to a degree, because you kind of have like a little bit of a special treatment to it.
Yes.
Degree.
I mean, I always used to say you got to find the perks. So, you know, we used to get to come down to Florida for the winters. You know, how many people were coming to Florida for the winters, and you know, if it wasn't because of her CF, we never would have been able to do that.
Yeah.
Or one of the things Ellie always loved to do is take a wheelchair in the airport, and we would get through really quickly through security.
Oh, that's right. Yes, things you don't think about. Yeah.
She used to say, "I earned it," and we would get to, and she, you know, that was one of the perks.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lung disease, you get to, you know, go in a wheelchair, even at times when she probably could have walked.
Yeah. You gotta use it. You know, my grandmother, whenever she visited from Florida, would always bring her handicap parking decal with.
Right.
You know? So, she didn't leave that at home.
Right. It's true. So you got to look for the good in situations. And, you know, this is life. You know, life is hard. We're under this impression that it's supposed to be easy, you know, like everybody will say, you know, it's not fair. But what is fair when everything goes your way? You know, is that fair?
Yeah. I feel like that is kind of, it's a great point. I've never heard it like said that way. But I feel like that's the perception a lot of the time.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
If it doesn't go my way, it's not fair, rather than kind of taking into account all the other, you know, outside influence and things that happen that you just can't control.
Right. Or why me? You know, why not me? You know, I mean, these things happen, so why wouldn't it happen to me? It happens to other people. You know, I'm another other person.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too when we kind of consider that reflection, the why me, only when kind of with negative things, right?
Right.
You know, we never say why me. You know, if we won
Hit
the
the
lottery,
lotto.
or got got a great job, or something does happen our way.
Right.
We never question the why me on that. So it's kind of interesting how we're always kind of thinking internally, you know, just for our benefit.
Right.
A lot of the time. Too.
Exactly.
It's interesting, the psychology on that.
Yeah.
Because you do hear that a lot. You know, either the why me or the you know, this happened to me. But it's great that, you know, Ellie too kind of didn't have that. I feel like that's why also she did have that brighter light. It sounded in her, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. She was a philosophy major, and she was a deep thinker, and liked to look at the big questions, and I think that she got it a lot. I think she got it.
Yeah.
So I think that made her life easier in a lot of ways for her. She sought the answers and was able to have peace around stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think being a philosophy major too, people who really decide to study that, they're kind of okay with not knowing like every single answer. It's just more so they want to research as much as they can and kind of know the basis around a lot of questions rather than knowing the answers. I feel like if that makes sense a little bit.
Yeah. And try to make sense of it.
Yeah, I would say that more than finding the answer to questions, just making sense of the question itself.
Right.
Because with philosophy too, I mean, when you start discussing death too and dying and a lot of the unknowns that are around too, those conversations can go on forever.
Yes. She actually developed a course when she was in college. She developed a course called The Philosophy of Death and Dying, and she taught it with the professor. Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she was, I'm sure she was trying to make sense of her own life.
I wanted to ask you, with the organization, you guys have done great work with.
And like we take part in Giving Tuesday, which is the International Day of Giving. It's kind of like the counter to
Black Friday.
And Cyber Monday. So those are days those are days of purchasing, and this is a day of giving back. And it's the Tuesday after Cyber Monday.
That's relieving to hear.
Yeah.
Around that time, because there's nothing like, Thanksgiving comes around and everyone's, praying at their kitchen table, thankful for everything. And then in 48 hours, they're just like fighting like kids over stuff in the store. So it's relieving that someone's trying to keep the Thanksgiving tradition.
Yes. Yeah.
Thankful.
All charities, a lot of charities take part in that day.
Good.
All over the world. And we've raised a decent amount of money. We used to fundraise for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for many years. But like I said, once we saw these families suffering, you have to stay as healthy as possible until they find a cure. And you need money to be able to stay healthy. Yeah. So, we always said that we were bridging that gap.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That gap till then. What is the life expectancy of someone with CF?
I think I haven't kept up with it since they've come out with some new medications just recently, but I think when Ellie passed away, it was that half of the people lived to be 30. We have a fund that we set up at Duke called Ellie's Fund. And there we're helping people to afford the costs associated with transplant. Okay. So a lot of times people have to relocate to go to these hospitals. And that could be very expensive. And, most people can't afford a second residence. And, you need to be there for 4, 5, 6 months. We were there from January until November. We were at Duke.
Yeah, that's usually for most people, not within even a half hour, an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Shot of where they live.
Right. So, that's, it's a lot of money and they need to fundraise. And, we've helped a lot of people who maybe needed a second transplant and couldn't afford to relocate back. or were sick and had to keep going back and couldn't afford the travel. The other thing is, with a lot of these transplant programs, you need to be able to show that you have a certain amount of money accessible in order to be even accepted into the transplant program. At Duke, it's about $15,000.
Oh, wow.
Because you need to pay rent. You need to, pay all of those medications. When Ellie died, she was taking like 90 pills a day.
Oh, shit. That is a lot.
Yes, because of all of the
90 pills a day. Holy shit.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if I take that in like a year. And
I know.
Including like Advil, Dayquil.
Yes,
like,
I know. 90 pills a day she was taking around, and she had diabetes at the time because of the transplant. You're on steroids, and steroids. A lot of times when you're on steroids, you can get diabetes. So it's a lot, and you have to be able to afford it. And unfortunately, these transplant programs, there are a limited amount of organs out there, and they need to give them to people that are going to be able to sustain and for it to be successful. And if you don't have the funds, unfortunately, it's not going to be successful. So, we try to help people with that so that they are candidates for transplant.
I'm under the impression that those take a while. There's a wait list. There's either an application process, or it's not promised either.
Right.
So it's just to kind of put ourselves in those shoes. You need a transplant, and your life depends on it. And then there's a wait list for it, and eventually you would get one, but then you'd also have to go through the surgery and the process itself of the actual transplant. So once you're on the wait list, it's not the end game. Once you get one, it's not the end game. You have to go through the surgery as well, and all those anxieties and feelings. And
it's a very intense process, and there are people that don't make it to transplant. I've seen people that have been on the list and they didn't get the organs in time and passed away. When Ellie was originally on the transplant list, she was in New York at Columbia Presbyterian, and she was waiting, and she was getting sicker, and they don't get as many organs as Duke does. So we had to pull her out of New York and get her accepted into Duke. And you also can't be too sick. You have to be strong enough to sustain the transplant.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of sounds like the longer you wait, the more ill you're going to get, and then the less likely
you're going to live.
Work.
Yeah, exactly. So, thankfully she was accepted, and they even have a rehab program that you have to complete before you can actually be listed. You have to be strong enough to sustain the transplant so that it'll be successful. It's all about, having somebody live and, and have a new lease on life.
And who makes these the decisions, or who gets what transplant, how long the process takes, the final approval? Is it the doctors? Is it the board of the hospital? Is there just a process that's black and white, or is there some discretion on the human level of, okay, we're going to give this to this person?
Yeah, the team at Duke, they have a transplant program, and the team make that decision. And there are a lot of different criteria for you to meet. And then there's a national list, and depending on the severity, once Ellie's first transplant failed, she was put up to the top of the list. For the second transplant. But there's a lot of things that the lungs have to be viable. They have to be in good condition. They have to match your blood type. They have to, there's so many different criteria as to whether or not the lungs are going to be appropriate for one person or the next. So it's a lot of hit and miss.
Yeah, we definitely take for granted the complexity of all of that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's just in the back of our minds, it's, oh, well, you need that. Well, just get surgery, go to the doctor, get a transplant. And we,
Right.
take into account the, it's not taking change out of your pocket. I mean,
Yeah.
these doctors are incredible, amazing. And then there's the whole process to where, it might not even work. It's kind of, I don't want to say luck at first to just have that match, but it just circumstances out of everyone's control.
Yes.
And then the doctors have to go in and use their skills. And how long are those surgeries? I mean, 10 plus hours, I got to assume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Easily.
Yeah.
I think they were like 13, 14 hours.
I can't even imagine being in such deep focus for that.
I know.
I don't think I ever have been in my life.
Yeah.
Because the normal attention span before you start to lose off is like 35 minutes, I think. Before that's why I think college classes are, about 40, 50 minutes. But then, you get, even watching Netflix, I can't even pay attention for an hour and a half before I start to drift. And
Yeah.
are in there, masked up, all no skin showing, covered, staring down for that long.
Yeah.
Is wild. When someone gets a lung transplant, those lungs would have to obviously come from a deceased person. It's not something you can donate.
Right.
And then they also have to be within the same age bracket, or does it
No.
matter? It doesn't.
It doesn't matter. The size matters.
So
The size matters, yeah. But no, it doesn't matter the age.
Okay. Where the lungs come from, they'd have to be similar in height, maybe, if that matters with lung size. But
I think so, yeah.
yeah. And they'd have to come from somebody who died with nothing affecting their lungs too. Like they couldn't be like a cancer patient who died,
Exactly.
smoked and
Right.
everything.
Right.
That's really interesting because there's
Yeah.
got to be such a small percentage of people who pass away with a decently healthy body, and then their lungs not being affected by it, and then more importantly them being an organ donor when they do pass, and then after that the organs are still good to be used after they pass, and they're not
Right.
kind of either decomposed or whoever was doing the autopsy and
Right. They got to move fast. They have to
Yeah,
move
yeah.
fast.
So
Yeah.
we're talking a tiny percentage
Yeah.
of the ability to get these
Yes. Yes. And that's why it's so important for people to be organ donors,
yeah
because, those organs, they give somebody life.
yeah
They give somebody the chance to live. And I think that there are like 8 organs that you could use from a person. So, that you could save 8 lives.
yeah you could. Do people know the person whose organs they came from?
There's a process that you can reach out, or they could reach out to you. So you, if you've had a transplant, you could write a letter to the donor's family, and then the family could choose whether or not to respond. And, then there could be a dialogue, but that's the only way to go about it. There's certain privacy issues.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say a lot of
Yeah.
that too.
But I know people that have contacted their donor families and have relationships with them. And it's very special.
refreshing to speak with you, Stacey, today, because I feel like anytime someone sees a child that's either terminally ill, they see the bald head, things like that. There's kind of like a thing in everyone's back of their minds that, oh, that person's gonna go to the hospital, they'll get the treatment, they'll get the care that they need, and there's not much more thought that goes to it. When in reality, like if figures like yourself weren't involved doing this stuff, literally, I don't think any of that is possible. Like you are the face of that thought that is in the back of everyone's mind of they could just go to the hospital, they could just get care. There's just such an assumption that things will work its way out for that person, whether it goes up or down, but that person will get the need that they have fulfilled. And we just completely, I feel like, blow past the figures that actually do make that happen. Because if we were to subtract you out of the equation and say Ellie's foundation isn't in existence, there's people that may not still be here today, or they may still be having those struggling issues, like the Lindsay Taylor story we discussed before. I mean, if you're not there for her, there's still mold in that place, and they're having to now face that problem. And maybe there's another organization out there. Maybe they don't work as quick, or maybe there's not another organization, and they now have to try to move their medical equipment to another room and hope that the mold doesn't spread into there too. And make do. So it's relieving to speak with you, to put a face to all of this, because I feel like there's so much behind the scenes, behind what you do, that we all just take for granted because we're kind of out of sight, out of mind.
And the other thing is, when you're helping somebody else, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the other person. So,
yes.
Especially like if I'm feeling sorry for myself, those are the times that I really have to make sure that I go out of my way to help another person, because then I'm not, thinking of myself and, oh, woe is me and all this, you're there for somebody else. And I think that you're right. I think that you get a lot out of giving. The giver gets just as much as the person that's getting.
Yeah. And I think, and you probably know a lot more about this than I do, being in the field of nonprofits too. When you speak with other people who run other organizations, there's probably just a glow in them, and a happiness that you kind of sense when you start speaking with them. That they're kind of proud of what they do, and just the overall feeling of being fulfilled and happy with life. Because they do help other people.
Yes, and at the same time, it's a business, and you're working, and people tend to get very caught up in that. And it's funny that you mention this, because I just started this recently, because we would be working and helping somebody, and then we would help them, and then we would be moving on to the next person, and not really taking the time to experience that feeling of joy and accomplishment. And it was just moving on to the next.
Yeah.
And so it was just this past week. That's why it's funny that you bring this up. We decided that when we did that, we were going to take time. We were going to listen to a song, the song Eye of the Tiger.
Yes.
And so we take a moment, we listen to that song, and we just, we'll dance around and,
yeah. It's kind of like your champagne.
It's exactly what it is. It's champagne.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's good to have that too, because you really need that. You can't skip that step.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, especially with super hard workers like yourself too, it just, you start the process, you get in the process, you complete it, but then you don't do that final step, which is
You
kind
have
of
to celebrate the wins.
acknowledging too what you've
Yeah.
done, which is really
Yeah.
what it's doing. You're acknowledging it's complete and it's done, and
Yep.
your body needs that feeling. I
Yes.
think after everything you've put in.
Because ultimately, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I can relate in more ways than one when it comes to skipping that, though, because
I
it's
think
just,
most people do.
yeah, we're just on to the next because we don't view it as like a necessity.
Right.
You know, like, and it really is. It really is because it keeps your longevity. It keeps it sustainable.
Yes.
You know,
You burn out otherwise.
Yeah, and it's really a marathon if you want to keep it going. It's an
Yeah.
interesting point with that. It's been absolutely awesome speaking with you, Stacey, today. I gotta say, I've learned quite a lot about cystic fibrosis, the process, the important work that you guys do. That's just
Thank you.
that so much goes into it, you know, the logistics, the behind the scenes that, you know, doesn't really get, I feel like, the credit that it should, because you're helping random people, you know. That's
Yeah.
the thing. It's not people, and it's random people, and it's people that most likely will never be able to do anything for you. And I think that speaks to the authenticity of you guys and what you do and the genuine part about it, because, you know, it's easy to do something for someone when, you know, there might be something in return or down the road, but you know, just when you're doing it for someone who's can't do anything for you, it is strictly goodwill. The intention is pure. I know you guys have a lot of great info on your website on elliesarmy.org on different ways to help. If you guys want to, if anyone wants to read more about you guys or contact or reach out, there's a lot of different ways people can help. It's not, you know, if you don't have money to donate or anything like that, there's a lot of different ways, that more than one, that you can help equally.
Yep.
That doesn't have to be financial. You know, there's a couple right on the website. I'm looking now, ways to help celebrate for Ellie's fun on special occasions, birthdays, holidays, weddings. Ask your friends or family. You can make a donation or a gift. You can host events, barbecues, ask guests to come. And, you know, even if it's just $5 for that little picnic table
Right.
over there, another $5
Yep.
for this table. You can organize car washes in her name, too, which is always a classic. And then the restaurant fundraisers too, I think, is an amazing way too that people don't think about. That a lot of restaurants have things in their corporate structures to help
Yes.
nonprofits. And this, you know, if you're in Washington or Oregon right now, and you know Ellie's Army is based in Miami, you can still help by just going to a restaurant and asking them to host an Ellie's Army Day, where a portion of the proceeds will go to the foundation. And, you know, a lot of these restaurants are Applebee's, Boston Market, Chipotle, Panera.
Yeah.
Go up there and they can really have everything set up for you in probably just a couple of minutes anywhere. So
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
that's it's a lot of great.
And even just sharing, you know, going on our social media, and which is at Ellie's Army Foundation. Our website is Ellie's Army, ELLIES Army, ARMY.org, O-R-G. And yeah, I mean, just, you know, join our army.
Yeah, that's great.
Reach out to me if you, you know, have any questions or want to talk about ways to get involved.
Yeah, and volunteering too. It's not, a lot of people think it's just like it's going to take up their whole time. It's a full-time thing. I mean, they can volunteer pretty much at their pace, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
No problem. And the best of luck to you guys too. I will absolutely be rooting for you and be your best cheerleader here on
Thank
the
you.
because
Thank you.
what you guys do is great. So
I appreciate that.
thanks so much, Stacey. And looking forward to catching up down the road. I'd love to do another podcast with you down the road, maybe like in in like a year from now, kind of touch base and hopefully
Absolutely.
we're at that-
Anytime.
and I'm sure I'll see you then.
All right. Terrific. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yep.
All right.
Stacey.
You take care.
You too.